We will be looking at surfaces in the next 3 video series. This is a fairly complicated subject, particularly if you've not worked with surfaces before, and 3D naturally adds a complicating factor. I'm therefore going to look at the surface tools and techniques fairly quickly on the assumption that if you need specific surface applications, you'll use MicroStation's help files for more detailed information. Also, in an effort to speed things along, I'll be giving you all the profiles I'm using in the videos. This will save you having to draw them yourself, something that was very important with the initial solids tools, but not so important with surfaces. Now, before working with the surface creation tools, it will be helpful to look at the methods by which MicroStation draws and displays surfaces. Specifically, since surfaces are mostly constructed from B-spline curves, a quick review of B-splines will be very useful, even though you covered this subject in the Level 2 videos. MicroStation offers several methods for creating B-splines, and you can quickly review these using the B-splines by points tool on the Create Curves toolbox, or on the Linear Tools box. Let's use the simpler one, the Linear Tools box. And if I open up my tool palettes, here is the Linear palette, and here's my B-spline by points tool. Now I've added this to my personal toolbox here, which simply saves me a little time. So I'm going to start that tool now and look at the tool settings window. And we see that there are several methods. Most common is control points. And we can either input the information by individual points using AccuDraw or by picking a line string. We can keep the line string if we wish. And we can change whether the B-spline produced is either open or closed. I'll look at both of these in a second. Leave it at open. And we can change the order of the B-spline. Now we'll discuss this again later, but for the moment leave that at 4. Now on the screen I have a simple line string. I'm going to use the B-spline by points tool to apply each of the different methods to this line string. So I'm going to make copies of this. So I'm going to reduce the size of the line string first, and then make copies. 2 copies over there. And let's make a selection set and make 3 more copies below. And I'll work on these. So I'm leaving that one as is, as the original line string. And we'll start working on the copies. So start the tool. So let's start with the control points method. And I'm going to use picking line string as the selection method, which is far quicker than using individual vertices of each line string. So let me zoom in a little bit. And I'm going to change the color too, so we see a differentiation between the line string and the resulting B-spline. So my tool is running, I'm at control points, picking line string, we select the line string and data point. And we see several things. The red line, continuous, that's the B-spline. And the broken line, half red, half white, they are the control points. Now notice in this case that the curve does not go through the vertices of the line string, although it does start at the first vertice and finish at the last vertice. The B-spline does not go through any of the vertices. This is not uncommon with the various methods. Let's pick the next method, through points. Now you would expect this to go through points, so data point on that, and look, and yes. The B-spline does go through each of the vertices of the line string. Moving along quickly to this one, L squared by tolerance. I'm not going to explain these methods particularly. Again, if you need specific information, pop off to the help files. Data point on this one. And now we see a more complex shape, but the line string does go through the vertices. But we have quite a different control point arrangement from this method. Try the next one. Least squares by numbers, data point. Again, in this case, the B-spline does not go through the intermediate vertices, but we have a much simpler control point layout. And lastly, Catmull run. This one does go through the vertices and has quite a dense control point layout, which simply means that you can alter the B-spline curve using these control points. And again, we'll have a look at this in a later video. Now, the points to keep in mind here is that the control polygon and the curve itself are generated by MicroStation using the mathematical formula for each method. It's important to note that each method creates a different curve, again in accordance with the method's formula. And you should also note that some of the methods do not pass the line through the string's vertices. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the closure and order settings in the tool settings window also affect the shape of the curve. If closed is selected in the closure option, the curve will loop back to its starting point. If the order setting is increased, the looseness of the curve increases. However, the order value cannot exceed the number of poles in the control polygon, which you typically don't know until you actually draw the B-spline. For most applications, an order of 4 is quite sufficient. But it's worth experimenting with different orders and making the curves closed to see what happens. So, when you work with the surface tools and the surfaces they create, firmly keep in mind that the surfaces are created with B-splines, and that the methods and setting options are similar to the single B-splines that we've just looked at. And depending on your current settings, you may not be able to see the control points. However, we'll fix that in the next video.